They say love makes you blind, but betrayal? Betrayal makes you see everything with crystal clarity. I learned this the night my husband told me I was nothing more than his practice wife. The candles were still flickering on our dining table when Ethan walked through the front door that October evening, lipstick smeared across his white collar like a scarlet letter of infidelity. I had spent hours preparing his favorite meal, arranging fresh flowers from our garden, wearing the blue dress he once said made my eyes sparkle. For 3 years of marriage, I had been the perfect wife, the understanding partner who never questioned his late nights or sudden business trips. "You're late?" I said softly, trying to keep the hurt from creeping into my voice as I noticed the obvious evidence of his evening activities. Ethan didn't even attempt to hide it. He loosened his tie with deliberate slowness, his eyes meeting mine with something I had never seen before. Complete indifference, mixed with cruel satisfaction. "I was having dinner with Chloe Sterling," he said, as if announcing the weather. "She's the kind of woman I should have married." The words hit me like ice water. Chloe Sterling, the successful businesswoman whose face graced the covers of business magazines, whose company was making headlines for its innovative marketing strategies. I had heard Ethan mention her name in passing, always with a tone of admiration that he had never used when speaking about me. "What are you saying?" I whispered, my hands trembling as I reached for the back of a chair for support. Ethan walked past me to pour himself a drink, completely ignoring the romantic dinner I had prepared. "I'm saying that you've been good practice, Arya, like a rough draft before the final masterpiece." He turned to face me, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "You taught me what I don't want in a real wife." The room started spinning. 3 years of supporting his career ambitions, of putting my own dreams on hold, of being the perfect hostess for his business dinners, of listening to his complaints and celebrating his victories. 3 years of believing that our love was real, that our marriage meant something. "A rough draft?" The words came out as a broken whisper. "That's right," he said, taking a sip of his drink as if we were discussing the stock market. "You're sweet, Arya, but you're basic. Chloe is sophisticated, successful, ambitious. She challenges me, you just exist." Something inside me snapped. Not the explosive kind of break that shatters into a million pieces, but the quiet, definitive kind that cuts clean through. I looked at this man I had loved, this man I had reshaped my entire life around, and suddenly saw him clearly for the first time. Weak, selfish, small. Without a word, I walked to our bedroom and pulled out my old college suitcase from the closet. My hands moved with surprising steadiness as I began packing my clothes, my books, the few possessions that were truly mine. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice followed me, tinged now with something that might have been panic. "You said I'm a rough draft," I said, not looking up from my packing. "Well, this rough draft is removing herself from your story." "Arya, wait. Let's talk about this." He grabbed my arm, but I pulled away. "I didn't mean... I... Yes, you did." I zipped the suitcase closed and turned to face him. "You meant every word. And you know what? Thank you." "Thank you? For showing me exactly who you are, for releasing me from the obligation of loving someone who sees me as practice for the real thing." I lifted my chin, feeling something powerful unfurling in my chest. "I'm done being your rough draft, Ethan. Time to write my own story." That night, I drove to a small, furnished apartment across town that I rented with my emergency credit card. The place was tiny, nothing like the spacious house I had just left, but it felt like freedom. I called my best friend Melissa, and within an hour, she was at my door with wine and tissues. "I can't believe he said that to you," she kept repeating, her face flushed with anger on my behalf. But I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up during the drive, replaced by something harder and more determined. "I can," I said. "It explains everything. Why he never seemed proud of my marketing work, why he always found excuses not to attend my company events, why he treated me like a supporting character in his life." Melissa studied my face carefully. "You're different already. It's like you've woken up." She was right. For the first time in years, I could see clearly. And what I saw was that I had been sleepwalking through my own life, accepting crumbs and calling them a feast. The next morning, I called my boss and requested a meeting. David Chen had always been supportive of my work, often hinting that I had untapped potential. When I walked into his office, he looked surprised by my transformation. Overnight, I had traded my conservative blouses for a sharp blazer, had styled my hair differently, walked differently. I felt like myself for the first time in years. "I want to pitch the Morrison account," I said without preamble. David raised an eyebrow. The Morrison account was our biggest potential client, a luxury hotel chain looking for a complete brand overhaul. It was the kind of account that could make careers. "That's ambitious, Arya. The team has been working on that pitch for months." "Give me 1 week," I said. "Let me show you what I can do when I stop holding myself back." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he nodded slowly. 1 week. But it has to be extraordinary. I threw myself into that project with an intensity I hadn't felt since college. I researched everything about Morrison hotels, analyzed their competitors, identified gaps in their current marketing strategy. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by determination and the intoxicating feeling of using my brain again. Meanwhile, Melissa introduced me to Ryan Miller, a divorce attorney who had been her study partner in law school. I remembered Ryan vaguely from college, a quiet but brilliant guy who had always been kind to me during group projects. Now he was successful, confident, and when Melissa explained my situation, his eyes flashed with protective anger. "He called you what?" Ryan's usually calm demeanor cracked. "A practice wife, a rough draft." The words no longer stung when I said them. They had become fuel. "We're going to make him regret those words," Ryan said quietly. "But first, tell me about your marriage. Everything. I need to know what we're working with." As I detailed 3 years of emotional manipulation, financial control, and psychological diminishment, Ryan took careful notes. By the end of our conversation, his expression was grim but determined. "Arya, you have grounds for a very favorable settlement, but more importantly, you have grounds for something better: complete freedom." While Ryan began building my legal case, I poured myself into rebuilding my identity. I joined a gym, not to change how I looked, but to feel strong again. I bought clothes that made me feel powerful instead of pretty. I took up painting, something I had loved in college but abandoned because Ethan thought it was impractical. 3 weeks after leaving Ethan, I presented my Morrison Hotel's pitch to the executive team. The room fell silent as I finished my presentation, and for a moment, I wondered if I had overreached. Then David started clapping, and the rest of the room joined in. "Arya, that was exceptional," David said after the meeting. "I'm promoting you to senior marketing director, effective immediately. And yes, you're leading the Morrison account." The vindication was sweet, but it was nothing compared to what I felt when I saw Ethan's social media posts that same week. Photo after photo of him with Chloe Sterling at expensive restaurants, exclusive events, charity galas. He was trying so hard to prove he had upgraded from me that it was almost pathetic. But I wasn't paying attention to Ethan anymore. I was busy researching Chloe Sterling, and what I found was fascinating. Successful? Absolutely. But also calculating, ambitious to a fault, and according to Ryan's private investigator connections, secretly engaged to a tech billionaire named Marcus Webb. Ethan wasn't dating Chloe. He was being used by her to make her real boyfriend jealous, while she used his investor connections to fund her next business venture. "She's playing him," I told Ryan over dinner one evening, and he's too blinded by his own ego to see it. "What do you want to do with that information?" Ryan asked carefully. I considered this. The old Arya would have felt sorry for Ethan, maybe even warned him. But the new Arya, the one who had been called a rough draft, felt something different. Justice. I want to wait. Let him dig his own grave a little deeper first. The divorce proceedings began 2 months after I left. Ethan was shocked by the thoroughness of Ryan's case. Text message records, financial documents showing his controlling behavior with our joint accounts, witness statements from friends who had observed his condescending treatment of me over the years. What he had probably expected to be a simple dissolution became a complex battle that he was losing badly. "She's changed." I overheard him telling his lawyer during a break in mediation. "This isn't the Arya I married." He was right. The Arya he married would have accepted whatever scraps he offered and been grateful for them. The new Arya had discovered her worth, and it was considerable. The breakthrough came during our final court appearance. Ethan, frustrated by how the proceedings were going, made the mistake of revealing his true character in front of the judge. "Your Honor," he said during his testimony, "my wife was always dependent, never showed initiative. She was like, practice for what I really wanted in a partner." The judge's expression turned glacial. "Mr. Black, did you just refer to your wife as practice in my courtroom?" Ryan caught my eye and smiled slightly. Ethan had just handed us the case on a silver platter. I was awarded 60% of our assets, the house, and my full financial independence. More importantly, I had legal confirmation of what I already knew. I deserved better than Ethan Black. But the real satisfaction came 3 months later, at the city's most exclusive charity gala. The Morrison account had been such a success that my company was sponsoring the event, and I was there as their representative. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a stunning black dress that showed off the confidence I had rebuilt, along with jewelry I had bought myself with my first promotion bonus. I was networking with potential clients when I spotted them across the room, Ethan and Chloe, looking like a power couple from a magazine spread. Ethan saw me first, and I watched his face go through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, and something that might have been regret. They approached me during cocktail hour, Chloe's arm possessively threaded through Ethan's. Up close, she was even more stunning than her magazine photos, but there was something calculating in her eyes that I recognized from my research. "Arya," Ethan said awkwardly, "you look different." "Success suits me," I replied calmly, extending my hand to Chloe. "You must be Chloe Sterling. Congratulations on your engagement to Marcus Webb. When is the wedding?" The blood drained from Chloe's face, and Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. Around us, people were beginning to notice the tension. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," Chloe said carefully. "Oh, I think you do," I said pleasantly. "Marcus is quite handsome, from the photos I've seen, and so generous with his investment in your new venture, though I imagine it's challenging to manage two relationships at once." Ethan turned to stare at Chloe, pieces clicking together in his mind. What is she talking about, Chloe? But Chloe was already backing away, her composure cracking. "This is ridiculous. Ethan, we should go." "No," Ethan said firmly, his voice rising. "What engagement? What other relationship?" The scene was attracting attention now, which had been my goal. Nothing destroyed a social climber's reputation quite like public humiliation at a charity gala filled with the city's elite. Chloe tried to salvage the situation, but it was too late. Within minutes, whispers were circulating through the crowd. Within hours, the story would be on social media. Within days, it would be in the gossip columns. Chloe Sterling, the celebrated businesswoman, exposed as a manipulative opportunist who had been using one man to make another jealous while siphoning business connections from both. I watched it all unfold with a sense of calm satisfaction. Not revenge, exactly, but justice. The truth had a way of surfacing eventually. Ethan tried to follow me when I left the gala, but security at my request had been instructed to keep him away. I didn't need to hear his apologies or explanations. That chapter of my life was closed. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. The Morrison campaign had won 3 industry awards, and I had been headhunted by a larger agency with a corner office and a salary that would have shocked my former self. I had moved into a beautiful loft apartment that reflected my taste, not someone else's idea of what I should want. Most surprisingly, Ryan and I had grown closer. What had started as professional support had evolved into friendship, and then into something deeper. He had been there through my transformation, never trying to change me or mold me into his ideal, but simply appreciating who I was becoming. "You know," he said one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment, "I had a crush on you in college." "Really?" I was genuinely surprised. "Really, but you seemed so happy with your life path, so sure of what you wanted. I never imagined." He trailed off. "That I'd end up divorced and starting over at 29? That you'd end up free to become who you were meant to be." It was a beautiful way to think about it. Not that my marriage had failed, but that it had freed me to succeed. The final confrontation with Ethan came 8 months after our divorce was finalized. I was leaving my favorite coffee shop when I nearly collided with a man who looked vaguely familiar. It took me a moment to recognize him. Unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days, the confident swagger replaced by defeated slouch. "Arya?" Ethan's voice was uncertain, almost hopeful. I studied him calmly. Chloe had, predictably, dropped him immediately after the gala incident. His reputation in the investment world had been damaged by the association with her schemes, and according to mutual acquaintances, he had made several poor business decisions in the aftermath. He looked like a man who had lost everything and finally understood its value. "Hello, Ethan. You look amazing, happy." He seemed to be searching for words. "I heard about your success at the agency. I always knew you were talented." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't. You thought I was practice." He flinched as if I had slapped him. "I was an idiot, Arya. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing. Chloe was using me. She never cared about me at all." "I know. You know? I've always known. I knew before you did." I shifted my coffee to my other hand, checking my watch. "I had a client meeting in 20 minutes. Is there something you wanted to say, Ethan?" He struggled with the words. "I want you to know that I'm sorry, that I understand now what I lost, that if there's any chance, there isn't." The finality in my voice seemed to break something in him. "Please, Arya, I know I don't deserve it, but—" "You're right," I said simply. "You don't deserve it. You don't deserve my forgiveness, my time, or my attention. But do you know what? That's not about you anymore. I'm not withholding forgiveness to punish you, Ethan. I'm simply done with you." I started to walk past him, then paused and turned back. "You told me I was a rough draft, remember? That I was just practice for the real thing?" I smiled, feeling genuinely peaceful for the first time in our entire conversation. "Well, thank you, because you were right about one thing. I was practice. I was practicing being someone I wasn't, trying to be what you wanted instead of who I am. But I'm done practicing now." I left him standing there on the sidewalk, looking lost and small. As I walked to my car, I felt the last weight of our relationship lift from my shoulders. He had been my catalyst, not my destruction. His cruelty had forced me to discover my strength. A year later, Ryan and I moved in together. Not because I needed someone to take care of me, but because we had built something real together, something based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. He proposed on the anniversary of the day we first met as adults, in the law office where he had helped me reclaim my life. "I love who you've become," he said as he slid the ring onto my finger. "But more than that, I love who you've always been underneath. I'm just glad you finally let her out. The wedding was small but perfect, filled with people who celebrated the woman I had become, rather than mourning the woman I used to be. David walked me down the aisle, since he had been the first person to believe in my professional potential. Melissa was my maid of honor, still fierce and protective but now celebrating instead of consoling. As I stood at the altar looking into Ryan's eyes, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain of Ethan's rejection had been real, but it had also been necessary. Without it, I might have spent my entire life as someone's rough draft, never realizing I was meant to be a masterpiece all along. The old Arya would have seen my story as one of betrayal and heartbreak. The new Arya knew better. This was a story of awakening, of discovering that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. After all, even masterpieces start as rough drafts. The difference is that masterpieces don't stay that way.